Hi guys. Today's Tuesday, so you guys get to hear me, Emmy, talk about this week's topic, which, as you know from Stephanie's video yesterday, is regarding treating bipolar or mental illness as a whole, specifically for our topic, bipolar, as an addiction, as though we were recovering from an addiction. And you're going to see me look down a lot because I actually had to write out notes on my thoughts on this topic because I had a lot of things to say, and hopefully I can remember to say them all. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and start by reviewing the article just a little bit for those of you who missed Stephanie's post. It's the article was a New York Times article, and it was actually about a man who was schizophrenic, and he actually made it through, or continues to make it through his illness without medicine. He only takes his medications, which are of course going to be antipsychotics, etc. When he goes through like extensive periods of continuous delusions or psychoses, which I find to be completely 100% interesting, because most people with bipolar do typically have to continue taking their medication for really extensive periods of time, if not their whole lives. Now, that's just a quick review. If you guys want to see a little bit more about that, you guys can go back and watch Stephanie's video. She goes a lot more in detail about it. It should be in the sidebar. I'll go ahead and put a link to it somewhere. But just to give you guys a little bit more perspective about me and where I'm coming from with this, up until literally like a week ago, I was like a freakishly huge caffeine addict. Caffeine all the time. Can't stop. And I actually used to smoke. Up until I smoked for like a year and a half, 2 years. And then I took like a 6-month hiatus, started up again, and I have not had a cigarette since the end of May. So I have, and now I don't want to compare that to what most people consider like addictions when they think of it, like heroin or really hard drugs, or alcoholism for that matter. But I do have a small amount of familiarity with the topic. Now, I actually recently gained a really interesting perspective on mental illness that I really think relates to this. I recently started seeing a new therapist, and I thought his views were really interesting, and I actually really loved them, and I'm excited to continue to see him. I have an appointment tomorrow. He recognizes that that I do have a real chemical imbalance, and that's something that I am going to have to deal with for the rest of my life. And that's something that the medications can help. They stabilize me, even me out, all that great stuff. But what he told me is that it is his job for me to fire him, or to get me to not need him anymore, basically, is what he's saying. So the reason that I feel that bipolar is actually really comparable to an addiction is it has a lot to do with addictions are actually typically very concurrent with other mental health illnesses, such as my bipolar is really concurrent with ADHD, as well as depression and hypomania, etc. So it's all kind of tied in together, just like a lot of times addictions and depression or schizophrenia or other mental disorders get tied in really closely with each other. So just like that you know, if you're an ex-smoker, for the rest of your life, you are probably going to continue to have nicotine cravings. Granted, I'm only like 2 weeks in on this no caffeine thing. I still have caffeine cravings, obviously. And, you know, after, you know, through the 6 months that I quit smoking and the past couple of months that I quit smoking, I have a nicotine craving like every single day, multiple times a day. And, you know, you just kind of have to deal with that. So what my therapist is really trying to teach me now is it's not, well, we're going to sit here and listen to you whine about your depression or how you can't sleep. I'm not going to sit here and let you cry all the time. He is really taking the approach that what I need to do and what he's here to help me to do is to teach me to cope and deal with how I feel when those things happen. To really help me, you know, when I get really manic or, you know, really depressed or whatever, and I have these feelings that make me want to self-harm, how to cope with those feelings, how to cope with the anxiety that goes with that, how to cope with the aggression that really goes with that. You know, how do I cope with, you know, when I'm so up I can't sleep, or when I'm down all I do is want to sleep, you know, how can I cope with those to continue to function? And, you know, he doesn't necessarily want me to not be on medication because I think he's a really great therapist. A lot of people who do, you know, psychotherapy, etc., they're not really into medicine, and people who typically go with medicine, they're just kind of like, yeah, you should probably do both. But he's really great. He's, you know, if meds are for you, then meds are for you. But I'm going to teach you how to cope with these feelings with or without them. So just like my therapist, you know, is trying to teach me to cope with these things, you know, that's what you teach a recovering addict. You teach them how to deal with those cravings. Just like sometimes I get these anxiety-driven and aggression-driven cravings to hurt myself. You know, an addict gets these crazy, you know, sometimes delusion or, you know, withdrawal symptom or depression-driven cravings for their drugs. So, I mean, you can almost treat a lot of side effects of bipolar, you know, things like self-harm, manic spending. I know I do that. I know Stephanie has spoken about her doing that as well. So I think that it's a very, very easy, you know, connection to draw and make between, you know, other, you know, at least bipolar for me, and mental health issues as a whole. It's easy to make that, draw that line, linking that analogy of recovering addict to, you know, recovering mental health. And I don't know that we will ever fully recover. You know, that stuff is always going to happen. And, you know, just, I feel, although my familiarity with addictions is not very great, I have very small familiarity with it, etc. You know, those cravings are going to persist for an excessive amount of time. You know, I think it's a really, really easy thing to make because, you know, those addicts are going to have to make that effort to deal with and find other ways to, you know, get out of that. So yeah, that was a really long and drawn out thing, but I hope, you know, it gave you a little bit perspective on me and how I feel about mental health. You know, feel free to write in the comments if you agree or disagree with me. I'd love to, you know, get a little bit of a conversation with you guys going on. I love to, not necessarily, I love to argue. I'm not even going to lie. I love to argue. So, get at me. Bye, guys.